Welcome to Scribbly Productions. The name's Zaya. Zaya, and I make Halo Machinima, and I have been for 11 long years. Before I started making my own, I've been watching Halo Machinima since I was 9. I still remember watching JT Machinima's Greatest Ever rap when it came out. I was also a huge fan of Rooster Teeth, John CJG, and Guitar Master X7 aka Lyle Rath. And I can name more, but we'd be here for a while. In all the time I've been watching and creating Machinima, I can think of 2 Machinima guides that actually go really in depth with how to create a Machinima. And both are over 10 years old and really hard to find. So I decided I would be the change I wanted to see, and I would make an in-depth guide on how to make Halo Machinima. I will touch a bit on other games, but Halo is the main focus. I'll be covering everything I think you need to know, and I'll use my experience and the experience of my amazing friends to help you bring your stories to life. We'll be starting with defining what a Machinima is, discussing the different genres of Machinima, the pros and cons of Machinima, and then we'll also discuss what different games you can use and your options in the Halo franchise, the different hardware and software you'll need to create one, along with some tips on the writing process, how you can organize your files, and discussing forge and character design. And finally, I'll explain creating game types, body acting, theater mode, cinematography, action scenes, voice acting, editing, sound design, render settings, and animation. Everything will also be divided into YouTube chapters to help you navigate. So, shall we begin? Let's start with, what exactly is a Machinima? Machinima is a combination of the words machine and cinema that basically covers any kind of video made using a video game. Montages, music videos, and let's plays are all technically machinimas. However, most people like me just consider the genre as narrative or cinematic stories using video game animations. Things like web series, short films, and movies. So there are plenty of options for games, but this video will be covering Halo. So why should you use Halo, you ask? I think the Halo franchise is the most approachable and user-friendly Machinima engine there is. It has a theater system, a weapon lowering system, and they're both easy to pick up and use. It's also incredibly easy to make your character look unique. But if you're looking for another franchise, there are also games like Destiny, Minecraft, Overwatch, Sims, and GTA 5. And with a bit of testing and practice, you can do a lot with those games. I will link any tutorials for other games that I can find in the description. Now let's discuss the pros and cons of Halo Machinima. Each Halo game has a different aesthetic, and you will need to find which one will suit your vision the best. For example, Halo Reach looks very gritty and realistic, while Halo 3 and Halo 5 look a bit more plasticky and cartoon-like. The pros for Halo Machinima are that locations, vehicles, and people are all easily accessible. You don't need to find assets if you're considering animation or to go through all the legal hoops of live action. You can see a list of everything you have access to in Forge mode. Imagine you want to tell a story where you blow up a car or someone dies. Blowing up a car costs a lot of money and takes a lot of paperwork, and killing people is illegal. But in Machinima, you can do both of those things. And if you need multiple people in a scene and don't have any friends, all you need to do is buy controllers. Machinima does have its limits, which we'll discuss, but the ceiling is very high. So for cons, different Machinima engines have different cons, but most do have these problems. For example, a lack of facial expressions and body languages. Some games like GTA 5, Sims, and Super Smash Bros. Do have characters with faces, but that can easily pull people out. In my experience, when people aren't really fans of Halo, it can be really hard for them to get past or understand why people are in the spacesuits, and some emotions will have to be expressed completely through voice acting and, of course, stiff body language unless you use animation. With a Machinima, you don't have any hand movements either, which can be really limiting compared to live action. You also can't have characters doing things like relaxing. Everyone will be standing on alert for the most part unless you can use tricks or animation. But the cons shouldn't stop you from creating Machinima since these limits aren't that limiting. Halo has multiple options for you to use, so I'll help you figure out which Halo is the best for Machinima, assuming you're using the Master Chief Collection, Halo 5, or Halo Infinite. I don't use Halo Combat Evolved or Halo 2 Original as they're a bit older and on the jankier side, so we won't be going over those. Let's start with Halo 2 Anniversary. I believe Halo 2 Anniversary is fine, but just very limited. It has very few maps, the forged textures are stone, which doesn't really work for maps the same way that the Forerunner style for Reach does, and there aren't many armor options, so you're gonna have a lot of characters looking the same. So Halo 2 Anniversary is definitely usable, but it's at the bottom of my list personally. Halo 4 gives you access to a lot. The theater works fine, the game has a lot of maps and plenty of variety, and there are plenty of armor options, and the Forge looks comparable to Reach. Unfortunately with 4, I think the cons outweigh the pros. The weapon lowering animation in this game is the worst in the series. It's just awful. And while there are techniques to get around it, I just don't think Halo 4 has enough to make it any better than the other options. And I also just don't believe the game has a great art design. Halo 5 offers incredible forge, weapons, vehicles, and maps. It does offer some of the franchise's worst armor designs, but there are plenty of usable good ones. The loot box system, while annoying, doesn't require you to spend money and has a simple unlock method where you buy rec packs in order of bronze, silver to gold, and then you'll have everything. Yes, it is different and you can't pick what you get, but the answer is the same as Halo Infinite and MCC's Battle Pass, which is just grinding the game. I do think the Halo 5 armor designs feel very plasticky, and the game does have some of the more limited armor designs since you can't pick things like shoulders or knee pads, but making 2 seasons of Halo Butt Buddies has given me a soft spot for Halo 5. There is, however, one extreme con: the lack of split screen. If you're using Halo the Master Chief Collection or Halo Infinite on the Xbox One X, you have the option to have 4 controllers, which are 4 characters you can control, all on your own in the same game. If you wanted to do the same thing for Halo 5, you would need 16 Xboxes, which is just ridiculous. You basically cannot make a Halo 5 machinima without outside help, and it can be incredibly limiting and time consuming to try to do that, especially since the game is now 8 years old. Halo 5 is a great option for machinima, but just isn't very accessible. And this is also the game where theater starts to become a bit unusable. The game does introduce machinima mode, which is amazing unless you record machinima live while you're body acting, and I find it incredibly useful. But that does limit action scenes, so you will need theater mode either way. I honestly don't have much to say about Halo 3's engine other than it's just a solid one. It has a great art style that goes really well with comedy, and while the forge isn't crazy, it does have plenty of maps. The most limiting aspect in my opinion is action scenes. There's no sprint, and the equipment doesn't feel very cinematic friendly to me. Theater mode still works, and with MCC you have access to plenty of great armor, mods, and everything you could ever want, and most of them are already unlocked. Halo Reach is arguably the best engine for Halo Machinima. It has tons of armor options, and while the Forge isn't as insane as 5 or Infinite, it's still one of the best in the series, and armor abilities work really well in action scenes. I also find the animations in this game are the smoothest in the entire franchise. The armor designs also look the least plastic. Theater mode, while a bit glitched in MCC, works amazing compared to the newer Halos. And when you get into mods, the game has so much to work with. The camera also has a very nice smooth effect that just makes moving shots a lot easier. And finally, I believe Halo Infinite is a close second to Halo Reach. The armor designs don't look as plastic as Halo 3 or 5, and unlocking the armor isn't random like Halo 5. You are required to buy the battle pass, but you'll know exactly what you're going to unlock and every piece of armor you want. I believe this game offers some of the least usable armor because of the incredibly different styles, all of which I'm not really a big fan of, but there is plenty available. The weapon lowering animation is not the best compared to something like Reach. In Reach, it looks very natural for a weapon to be lowered, but in Infinite, it's very quick, so it just doesn't feel as organic. The game offers plenty of maps, as well as an even more advanced forge that offers AI now, which has never been seen in Halo outside of mods. The game also offers 2-player split screen for the Series S and 4 for the Series X. Arguably the biggest benefit Halo Infinite has is that it's currently the newest addition in the franchise, and thus gets the most search traffic and updates on YouTube. Each Halo has its pros and cons, but I believe your best options are between Reach and Infinite, with 3 being a solid choice as well. But ultimately, the choice is completely up to you. Now you need footage. Here are the specs for my desktop I made 10 years ago. You'll need to check what your capture card and editing program need, but if your specs are anything like these, you'll be good. In my experience, if you can play games on your laptop, you can probably edit and handle a capture card. Capture cards are improving and changing, so instead of telling you what's the best in this specific point in time, I'll let you know how I found mine. I watched some YouTube videos and compared them and then picked what I thought was best. Your goal is just to find one that fits your specs and your budget. If you have your Halos on your PC, OBS is a very valid option. When I started, I looked for the cheapest one I could find, which was a Roxio at the time. And look at me now. I should have learned animation. Once you have your capture card figured out, you'll need to find an editing program. I personally use the Adobe Creative Suite, but they don't allow you to actually buy the program and trap you in an endless subscription model. Some other options are DaVinci Resolve, Windows Movie Maker, HitFilm 4 Express, and Final Cut. If you've never edited before, there are plenty of tutorials on YouTube, but the best way to learn is to get started and figure it out as you go. While you're getting software, I also recommend Audacity for your voice recordings. And if you're looking for microphone recommendations, I'd try Blue products. I really like the Blue Snowball, and I've had 2 Yetis in my lifetime, but they've both broken and aren't my favorite. Even now, whenever I don't know how to do something, I simply YouTube it, find a tutorial, and try to commit the process to memory. You're going to suck if you're starting out. Just keep practicing and you will get better. If you're looking to start this with a $0 budget, there are some completely free editing programs and also a free method of getting footage without a capture card. Take it away, Justin.
Making Machinima while on a $0 budget isn't the most optimal, but is very doable if you know the right techniques. Just like Isaiah discussed beforehand, you'll still need a PC and some kind of console if you're recording footage from there. First and foremost, in terms of free video editing software, it can be tough to find one that actually delivers. If you're unaware, many companies like Filmora claim to offer a completely free video editing program, but when you're using it, you'll quickly discover that anything you export has this god-awful watermark plastered over the thing, forcing you to either buy the full program or deal with this distracting overlay. Luckily, I'm going to show you an option that is 100% free and is comparable to its much more expensive brothers out on the market. HitFilm Express is a professional-grade video editing program that can be downloaded directly from their website. Installation is a simple process, and once obtained, you'll have more or less everything you need to make a machinima. The layout can be a bit overwhelming for a newcomer, but the basics are as simple as can be. You import your video clips, drop them into the editing timeline, and you can cut them up with the use of the software's slider system. And if you're feeling a bit adventurous and want to dip your toes into the world of advanced video editing techniques, HitFilm has various preset filters, blurs, green and blue screen removers, alongside many more. Now, these presets are decent enough, but I recommend navigating to the Control tab on the right, moving on to Effects, and using the drop-down menus, which will open up the Settings tab for the effect currently in use. From here, you can play around with the intensity of various options until you get a result you like. Oh, one more thing before we move on. If you want to add text to your machinima for whatever reason, you need to click the right arrow on the user panel for the text menu to even appear. On this screen, you can set the font you want to use, its color, the outline color, and of course, its size. Now, this is the part I never knew for the longest time, and yes, it is because I'm dumb. But in order to place your own text on screen, all you need to do is click the letter icon on the left-hand side of the viewer window, then simply click wherever you'd like to place the text on screen. HitFilm Express is a great free alternative to other editing softwares out there, but it is not perfect. It streamlines some processes but complicates others, especially if you're looking to apply a wide range of visual effects to your projects. But if you're looking for an easy and completely costless software to get you started, you cannot go wrong with HitFilm Express. And if you really enjoy the program, you can also opt for the paid version, which comes with many more tools. Yes, that's right. This software has microtransactions. Since we've got our editing software all figured out, let's talk about recording gameplay footage without a capture card. Yes, the hard part. And luckily, it's easier than it's ever been before. Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, and Windows PCs all come with a built-in game capture system, normally utilized by pressing the share button whilst in a game. Before we go in depth, the recording quality isn't as high as you would like it to be. It's going to be around 720p. It's decent, but not the best quality-wise, although, as a fellow broke person, we gotta take what we can get. Also, some of these methods can be a bit more difficult when it comes to getting the footage from your system to your computer, but every major platform does have at least one way of getting the footage to you. For this demonstration, I'll be going over how to complete the process on Xbox and Windows PCs, as they are the platforms I'm the most well versed in. Starting with Windows, all you need to do is press down on the Windows and G keys on your keyboard simultaneously, and you'll pull up the game bar. Immediately, you're assaulted with a lot of things, but we're looking for the capture icon. Clicking it will give you options for recording, snapping screenshots, and also clipping the last 25 seconds or so from the game. Push record and you're all good to go. Once you're done, the footage will automatically appear in your computer's video tab. While we're here, I'd also like to mention OBS, which is an open source streaming and recording software available to all, and is by far the preferred method of getting gameplay while on PC. There is no quality cap for the footage, many quality of life features, and also streaming functionality. Sounds great, but if you're running an outdated rig, it can be pretty hard to run as the program is fairly demanding. Not to mention that it's much more involved and complex when compared to the basic method, although if you can run it, please do, it's much better. Over on the Xbox, push down the middle button and then make your way to the Capture tab. Hit Start Recording Now, and that's really it. Although you do have a time limit on how long you can record for. Back on the Xbox One, you could record for up to 10 minutes. But it seems that with the Series X and S, you can only record for up to 4 minutes? That's a massive downgrade and makes this method far less appealing. Not sure why they did this, but it is what it is. Regardless, once you've finished your recording, upload the clip to Xbox Live. Next, on the computer you're using to edit, head to the website GamerDVR. Once there, enter your gamer tag on the search bar, move to Clips, and now you can grab the recording from your Xbox and download it to your computer. Congratulations! You now know all you need to know about how to record and edit, all for free. Once again, it's not perfect, but it will suffice, especially when starting out. Alright, Isaiah, I'm done. Can you pay me now? I want to see how much it'll take for two homeless guys to box each other.
Alright Justin, that's enough of you. You really can make Machinima without spending money if you need to. Some modern consoles can even record and trim your videos down. I'm not sure how that works, but if you post in the comments, I will pin it or heart it or something. Let's try to make the comment section a resource and share tips or methods you can use. It's never been easier to make a Machinima. Next, we'll touch on Machinima genres. Machinima is just a different form of animation, which means you can do any genre. There's drama, horror, fantasy, romance, but the most common for Machinima are sci-fi, action, and comedy. While I do think Machinima lends itself to action and comedy the best, people have pulled off dramas like Arc made by Q-Man. But in my opinion, it's a lot harder to pull this off with a lack of flexible facial expressions and limited body language. For example, if someone is crying, you can't really show tears going down someone's cheek. Some games like Fortnite or Destiny have emotes that can replicate these emotions, but I don't believe it feels natural or convincing and typically just pulls me out of the video. Now we are writing. So first, let's pick what kind of series we want to make. You can make a simple episodic comedy with a handful of characters, or make a Machinima epic with hour-long episodes and huge casts. A tip people give in basically every creative medium is your best option is to start small. Yeah, it's awesome to plan a series spanning multiple seasons, but something I feel like people don't mention is that it will take you years to finish. Like if you're planning a 5-season show, odds are that will take you half a decade. If you're new to this, that can be incredibly ambitious and also incredibly daunting. It's easy to be driven by the hype of starting and then once you're a season in, getting overwhelmed, and then you quit. Personally, I started with a 1-season show called Adventures in Halo. Do not watch it. It let me get the hang of camera movements, learn to edit, and while my next series wasn't much better, it gave me a great start to learn the ropes. And if you think like this, you can easily expand the show after a season. Now that we know what kind of show we're going to make, what will it be about? My first show was about friends playing matchmaking in Halo. My second show was about 2 roommates living together. And then my third show was an RVB fanfiction about the Spartan program. You can set the show wherever you want. Real life, a version of the Halo universe, or in the actual game. If you're a fan of any shows in particular, you can make something inspired by that. I was heavily inspired by series like Matchmaking by Darkspire Films, and Phil by Blacklight Productions for my first 2 series. Personally, once I've got my premise, I like to think of my characters next. I would start with a small cast to hone your skills a bit. A dynamic duo is always fun. We have series like Arby and the Chief by John CJG or Isaiah and Brian by yours truly. We have shows with 3 main characters also like CNP by Alexo, The Unsociables by Mike WB, or Halo Butt Buddies also by me. There's also ensemble series like Rise of the Spartans made by a pedophile, Red vs. Blue made by Rooster Teeth, or Running Dead made by Nightmare Films. There are so many works you can look at to get some inspiration. When I write characters, I like to think of how different they are and how they interact in different scenarios, since I mostly write comedies. Don't worry about knowing every single thing about your character from day one. I don't personally plan every single aspect of my characters. I like to let the dynamic naturally develop as my story goes on. For example, in my series Halo Butt Buddies, Harold was never intended to be a lawyer until it was revealed in the season 2 episode Trial of a Century that he was. The script just called for Harold to be unusually competitive with Frank in the courtroom, and I thought it would be a great reason for it to happen. But that's me, and you're you. So do whatever you find most comfortable. Once you've got your characters, let's outline the episodes. There are a lot of different techniques you can use to outline. One of the ones I like to use is Dan Harmon's story circle. Dan Harmon's story circle is an 8-step process that starts with a character the audience can identify with. Then you decide what the character needs, and that need compels them to go somewhere. When they go somewhere, that changes things. They go through trials until they find it beats them down somehow, and now they come back to their start having changed. There's plenty of material on this, and if you write enough scripts with this format, you'll get the hang of it quickly. Once you have your outline, it's writing time. You can write your script however you want, but I personally like and recommend screenplay format. It makes me feel all professional, it's easy to use, and most of the voice actors you'll be working with will probably know it. Learning also isn't too hard. Most of it is actually automatic. First, you should pick a software. I've used a couple of different ones like Celtics and Fade-In, but I found Writer's Duet to be the best one. They offer a lifetime option, so you don't have to be stuck paying a subscription fee, which can always get pricey. So if you're serious about this, you'll definitely want one forever. When you're writing your screenplay, treat this as a version of your story for your voice actors. Don't overdo it on the specific actions and shot for the first draft. Just try to tell your story in a non-visual way. Don't overdo it on the specific actions and shots for the first draft. Just try to tell your story. If you want to draft with all that direction for filming later, that's fine. But I'd recommend making a version that doesn't give voice actors too much information. It can make it a bit cluttered for them. Once your script is done, you're on to the next stage, which is to finish it again. I like to finish a script, then go back and clean it up before sending it out to my friends whose opinions I trust. Once I get their feedback, I go back through and implement it. Then once that's done, I like to go through a fourth time about a week later and say all the dialogue out loud, how I want it to be performed. And then after that, you read it one more time for good measure and it's done. If you have any trouble saying the line or it sounds weird, try to change it a bit until it works. Once you're satisfied with your script, you're done. You finished it. The rule is 1 page equals 1 minute, but I found that it's rarely incredibly accurate, but it's a good thing to know just so you have a bit of an estimate though. Now that you have a script, you need some voices. A lot of people voice in their own projects, so you can cast yourself in whatever roles you feel you do the best. John CJG did all of his voices in his series for years. But I do think there's a big raise in quality when you have multiple voice actors. And voice actors are everywhere. If you can find a Machinima server like mine, for example, there are tons of people who'd love to be in a project. I personally get my voice actors from Casting Call Club or my community. I do think that if you have some stuff to show people, that will help. And one final piece of advice, and I've only had to do this a handful of times though, is to have an understudy or a backup plan if a VA happens to drop out. It really doesn't happen to me often, and it might not even happen to you ever, but it is a possibility and it can suck. So just know what you're gonna do if that does happen. I know what you're thinking. When are we gonna get to labeling and organization? Well, don't you worry, we're finally here. Now that you've finished casting, make sure to give your voice actors plenty of time. Communication is key here. I expect lines in about a week at the very least, and after that, I try to send some reminders periodically. Optimistically, they can just give you the exact date they can do them, but if not, and they aren't meeting your deadlines, recast. This is a commitment and you have the right to expect to get your lines from voice actors. But they're also probably doing this for fun and for free, so they don't really owe you anything. Just be open and honest and let them know when they're reaching recast point and don't hold it against them. People are busy and life happens. Once you start getting files, you'll have to organize them. This is a system I learned from a friend of mine. You abbreviate your series name. For me, it would be like Last Man Standing is LMS, Halo Butt Buddies is HVB, and so on. Then you label the season by 100 and then the episode number. I like for the VAs to also give me the name they want in the credits so that I don't lose track. If we were doing Halo Butt Buddy Season 2 Episode 12, the file name would be HBB212_Isaiah. Aside from that, I recommend having folders for your dialogue and your footage, even dividing it by scene if it helps you. If you can afford an external hard drive, consider one of those to help you back things up. Now that all of your roles are cast and you've got your dialogue, I recommend you edit that dialogue. I think audio is the most important part of a video. Some people don't even look at videos when they watch, but they're always listening. Your audio won't be perfect, especially since you're just starting out, but make sure your voice actors' microphones aren't obnoxiously bad. I like to edit all of my dialogue as much as I can, as soon as I can. It'll let you know which lines work and don't. And remember, your script isn't done until the video is released. If your script isn't really translating right at this stage, don't be afraid to send out retakes and rewrite what you have to. Flexibility is important and you should be looking really hard for what sucks, because I guarantee a lot does. When I write a line of dialogue, I'm very prepared for the voice actor to not pronounce it right for me, or to have a typo. It happens. Don't be afraid to ask a VA for retakes. I'm sure they'll wish you did when the video actually comes out and they can tell a line just doesn't sound right with context. When you edit your dialogue, make sure you're using separate tracks for your lines that are touching each other. You want your dialogue to sound unnaturally natural. People talk over each other all the time, and you want the flexibility to be able to mess with the timing and get it to sound just right. You want to avoid long pauses unless you did it on purpose. For example, I have very fast-paced dialogue. People talk quickly and jokes are pretty rapid fire. But maybe you want your dialogue to sound a bit more natural and slow. That's fine, of course. Just make sure you listen to it a lot and just make sure you're completely happy with how it sounds. That's right. After however long this video is so far, you're actually in the game. Depending on your script, you'll either want to use a base forge map or get something custom made. Since I don't forge my maps, and when I do it's awful, I asked my set designer for advice. The great Norman Shockwave, set designer for the amazing maps you see in Last Man Standing and some of Halo Butt Buddies, sent the following tips. 1. Draw the map on paper to plan out the blocking. 2. Get references from real buildings and terrain. I'm going to stop doing the numbers now. Ask yourself, what parts of the map will be important to camera shots? Maps don't need to be super complete in parts that will not be shown. Get creative with the forge objects that are available to you. Looking at them from all different angles can give you a better idea for details, like using a bridge for walls. It can help make areas stand out more. Get knowledgeable with all the available objects. And then again, references are very useful when building sets. Don't be afraid to get creative. Personally, I try to use the base maps as much as I can for games like Halo Reach because when it comes to that game, you're gonna end up using Forge World a lot. But for Halo 5 and Infinite, if I have an idea for a custom map, I'll always ask for it to be custom made. I think for a show like Halo Butt Buddies, it adds to the comedy to see an office in a video game. And for Last Man Standing, it's really nice to have these epic, huge bases and stuff. It adds to the grand scale of the series. If you want custom maps but you aren't a forger like I'm not, you should ask. In my experience, forgers are really open to help and would love a reason to make something. Just make sure you give them plenty of time and communicate what you need well. I'd also make sure to get updates on it to make sure you're getting the kind of map you need. Give them a time frame and make sure they can hit it. I like to send messages periodically just to check in, and if they end up not being able to finish it, that's okay. Always have a backup plan and never hold things against people for doing you favors. In 2024, armor customization has become a lot easier. Now in MCC, we have all the base armor for Halo 3 and 4, and Halo Infinite at least gives you the option to pick which battle pass you want. When I look for helmets, unless it's for a joke, I make anything with a ridiculous visor off limits. I tend to personally like helmets that resemble faces. If a helmet doesn't really look like someone can actually see through it, I don't use it. You're going to want to make 4 accounts. As long as one account has gold and is signed in, they'll all have it. I recommend making 3 new accounts for body acting. The first 100 levels on MCC give you armor points you can use to unlock all of the armor in Halo Reach. You can also focus those points on whichever battle pass has the armor for the game you're using. Getting points can be super tedious after those first 100 levels, so be warned. For Halo 5, odds are you'll be using body actors, so you don't have many options. It's also random, so your best bet is to just grind Warzone Firefight and hope the people you can get have what you need. And I recommend focusing on the Season 1 Battle Pass and Reach Core on Infinite. That's just the one I think has the best looking armor. You have access to the free winter armor, so take advantage of that also. It's really time consuming and very tedious, but once you have it, you'll never have to worry about it again. When you're designing your character, try and really think which armor would go best with your character's voice and the character you're writing for. If someone is pessimistic and negative, don't give them a helmet that has a big open visor. Try and give them something that looks a bit more narrow. If you can have the armor pieces match the weapon they have, that's also good. But I really do focus on the helmet personally, more than just the armor. When you're thinking of how to design your character, think of how the character would dress themselves. A small thing I like to do for the game type is make everyone visible with a waypoint on their head. It just makes things way easier, especially if you're using a lot of body actors. I also like to lower the movement speed and jumping height to about 90%. It just makes the camera following a little easier and no one will notice. In Reach and 4, you can make custom classes for each character, but in the other games, you're gonna want to make sure you have weapons on the map. For Halo 5 and Infinite, be sure to have Machinima mode on for access to weapon luring and being able to use the camera live. Those are all my basic tips, so just keep things in mind that bug you and add them or change them to your gamer type however things benefit you. One of the biggest changes for Machinimas, I think, is modding. For anyone who wants to make a large bombastic series using any MCC games, you should definitely consider learning the basics of modding. I don't know much about modding myself, but my buddy Dunk has been working on a mod that lets you have Spartan bots in multiplayer. He's also developed a free-for-all mod that allows you to have your colors in Forge mode. Two other mods that are available on Xbox MCC and have really changed Machinima are Anvil Editor and Mythic Slayer. The Anvil Editor, made by WeC, allows for amazing things like changing the skybox, scaling Forge objects, and even changing the map live in customs. Mythic Slayer by Trusty Snooze lets you combine vehicles, scale items, and players, and do cool things like making your characters drop weapons in-game. I'll also add Dunk's channel because he uploads videos on different fun mods he figures out how to do and uploads some guides himself. All of these are available in my file share. My gamertag is THA Great Isaiah, and the names of the modded game types will be on screen because I didn't know them when I was writing this, and I also don't know them when I'm recording this. Now, if you want to take full advantage of Dunk's mod, you're going to have to learn about mod tools on MCC PC. Some of the modded game types on MCC really can revolutionize what you do. They can allow you to make duplicates of your Spartan. You can use the Forge monitor in customs and have it hold guns. You can use modded vehicles that combine two vehicles together. You can do so much with these mods, and I'll be showing videos of what you can do while I'm saying this, but unfortunately I'm not super informed about how to educate you on it. So I just recommend you try it out and learn yourself. Seriously, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with these mods. Now here's a short introduction to modding by Dunk on how to get into mod tools and what you can do.
For a Slayer bot match, we want to spawn a bot, and we want the bot to have the ability to respawn on its own. Before we get to the scripting, let's just make sure the bot can actually spawn. Create a squad. The bot needs a spawn point and an easy name. I always use red or blue as the squad name. For the spawn points, the default names are fine, but if you want a good workflow, give them easy names, like 0, 1, or 2, basically numbers to differentiate them. Create a cell and put the amount of bots you want to spawn at a time. If your bot still doesn't spawn, save your progress and then click map reset. Your bot should now spawn. Moving on, let's get to the scripting. Use Notepad++ because it will make scripting insanely easy. It will help you spot errors in your code. For the bare minimum, you want to check if the bot is dead. If the bot is dead, then respawn bot. To do this, we need a continuous script. An easy example looks like this. This is the bare minimum. It should respawn the bot immediately after they are defeated, but it's possible to get very complicated with your script. To prevent the map from reaching the render limit and causing visual glitches, you need to remove map garbage, but Firefight tends to hoard garbage similar to the campaign mode. We can solve this by changing the way we spawn our bot.
Out of personal preference, I start off by destroying the biped before recreating it, and then I place down the AI because the AI is going to possess the biped that we spawn with. If you have multiple AI attempting to spawn on that biped, Sapien is going to crash, and especially the Master Chief Collection. This is kind of unstable, so either do it correctly or your game will crash. And so, out of personal preference, because this is a power weapon bot, I have them sleeping for 3,000 game ticks before they spawn, either with a sniper or with a rocket. So when their biped dies, it sleeps for 3,000 game ticks, and then when they're ready to respawn, it deletes the body, it recreates the body, and then it places the AI into the body again. Now there's this fancy script that spawns the AI into the map, into a random spawn point. That pretty overcomplicated, but this tutorial is not all about that.
If you want a step-by-step guide, I recommend IC Advice's tutorials. They are very easy to follow and go very in-depth. They'll be linked in the description. You've been waiting in anticipation, and the time is finally here. We are finally body acting. You have your dialogue all laid out, your capture cards set up, and you're ready to get that footage. But before we start, are we doing multiple controllers or working with body actors online? Working with people online has its perks. Setup can be much quicker, you don't have to run around the map to change weapons constantly, and overall, you're saving yourself quite a bit of time on the tedious stuff. Body actors are also basically required for action scenes, especially if you want them to look good. Now, if you can use bots, that's a game changer. But let's assume you don't have time to learn all that yet. If you're going the body actor route, I recommend you have minimal head movement, considering you need to worry about timing the dialogue to match your character's head movements. I still feel weird personally about making people sit around and wait while I record, but if you think you can handle this, then this is definitely an option. If you're going to be using Halo 5, you will be limited by what people have because of the rec pack's randomness. You wouldn't believe how many times people just didn't have either the visor or the helmet just because. Finding people to help you will also be a really hard process, if you can even find enough people. Now hey, if you are someone who doesn't mind body acting and you're kind of interested, I think it's pretty chill mostly. You definitely get to know people, and combined with Discord, it's a nice small niche community. If you don't know where to start, try my Discord or the Halo Machinima Reddit, our Halo Machinima. If we have body actors willing to contribute to the community, it's definitely more incentive for people to try to make machinimas. Some good practices for working with body actors are to try and work with people in your time zone, have a set schedule so people always know when you'll be doing sessions, and try to reward and treat the dedicated body actors extra well so that they keep coming back. And if you do manage to get enough body actors, just keep in mind you will lose those really specific body movements only the director can do. Working alone is also a valid option. I've done both, and when I can pull something off solo, I get it done a lot faster. You also get the nice perk of being able to pause and work things out in your head before moving, which doesn't run the clock. If you don't have enough people or controllers for a scene, you can also use simple camera techniques, like John CJG does, to pull it off. To make sure I can pull it off, I purchased and grinded through multiple battle passes on different accounts for armor. It is super tedious, but doing it made things so incredibly easy for series like Last Man Standing and Halo Butt Buddies. It allows me to easily switch from MCC Xbox to PC without having to worry about if body actors have access to PC. If you're going to do this solo, you may need to get 4 controllers, but it's not like they need to all be the best kind. Used ones and wired ones would work perfectly, and they're half the price. So now that you know how you're doing it, get on that map, get your weapons, and act. When you're moving your character, try to match how the voice actors deliver the line. I don't recommend straight up head bobbing like in RVB, but having the head move to emphasize a yell or aggressive line definitely helps. When it comes to any more head bobbing than that, I find it pretty tedious. It makes the entire process take longer, but if you do like to bob, I'd just try and match the lines best you can. Don't be afraid to do it, and don't let me stop you. It's fine, I just think it's more work than it's worth personally. A trick I like to try when bobbing is slowing down or speeding up the footage so that it matches. So if you can't get bobbing right, I would just avoid it in general. It's not really worth it if you're not even into it. Don't have people bobbing their heads all over the place if you're doing a serious drama. Head bobbing is inherently silly and needs consideration to be used appropriately. Once you put your shot in the editing program, you can tell if it looks awful. Get some practice in before you start really recording, but I will add, head bobbing does help some viewers indicate who's talking, so just do what you want. Oh, and don't forget to use your sensitivity to adjust your bobbing speed. Don't bob super heavily, just small movements to indicate someone is speaking. It's not a punk rock concert. Now, when it comes to movement like walking, you want to tilt the controller to achieve different walking speeds. You can obviously sprint in some games, but there's also tilting it all the way so you get a fast run, or just a little bit so you get a slow walk. If you're trying to get a specific speed, just look down at your legs and try to match your speed to the placement of the joystick. Aside from that, just do what feels right to you. I have small movements or big ones based on what I think will look funny. A lot of times I don't really do anything because it's just a dialogue bit, but it's genuinely whatever you think looks best. I asked my audience for anything they'd like me to specifically target, and I was asked about my staging and blocking process. I don't personally have one. I do a bit of planning in the design of the map, but once I get in the game, I just kind of wing it based on how I want to tell the story, and that works for me. But if that doesn't work for you, consider storyboarding or a shot list. You can have the order or know what the shots will look like before you start, and that may be easier for you. If you're just starting out, it'll take you a second to get your process down, but don't worry, you will. Now, let's learn about weapon lowering. Weapon lowering in Halo CE is very simple. All you have to do is look straight down. It looks bad with almost every gun except the pistol and the plasma pistol. They're the only ones that really look good. You can shoot and throw grenades while your gun is down. It doesn't look really weird, but it does look like you're trying to blow your foot off or blow yourself up. When you exit a vehicle, it can't be fully lowered, but it's lowered enough to look legit. Now on to Halo 2. It's even easier to lower your weapon in Halo 2. If you want to lower your weapon, all you have to do is press down on the D-pad or hold LT. The gun will not be lowered on your screen, so you should have someone else in the game if you want to make sure. You can be holding grenades with your gun lowered, and your gun will raise if you shoot or throw a grenade. Rocket launchers do not lower. You can pick up grenades when your weapon is lowered, and if you use the LT method, you can throw a grenade and the gun will lower if you keep holding it. You can also keep your gun lowered when exiting a vehicle, which is random but cool. And that is everything you need to know about Halo 1 and 2 weapon lowering. If I missed something, I will probably post it in the comments or the description. I hope you enjoyed. Peace out. The newest and most important thing about weapon lowering is that it can now be done online. The weapon lowering combination is LB, RB, click on the left thumbstick, down on the D-pad, and pressing the A button. The weapon does not stay lowered when you enter a vehicle, shoot, or throw a grenade. You can switch and pick up weapons without the gun being raised. If you hold onto a turret, your weapon is raised, but if you switch weapons, it will go back down. When you want a nice looking way to raise your gun, make sure you have no grenades and just press the grenade button, and your gun will raise. Most guns look good when lowered, but the Spartan Laser and Rocket Launcher do not look the best. On to Halo 4. Now, in order to lower your weapon in Halo 4, you must hold down the X button, A button, B button, and down on the D-pad. When you enter and exit a vehicle, your gun will stay lowered. It is also worth noting again that you can lower weapons online in Halo 4 as well. You can pick up a weapon and it will stay lowered. Using armor abilities will keep your weapons lowered also. Weapon lowering seems to work with every controller setting except for Recon. Unfortunately, the Halo 4 animations have not been fixed, and the gun still raises when you walk. Crouching also makes your gun go back up, and moving your head around has no effect. And that is everything you need to know about lowering your weapon in Halo 3 and 4 in the Master Chief Collection. If I missed anything or anything changes, I will be sure to add it to the description or the comments. In order to lower your gun, all you need is to have your controller layout set to Universal Reclaimer. Press and hold the down D-pad, X, left click on the thumbstick, and the A button. If you want, you can also have the button layout set to Universal Default, and the buttons you will need to press are RB, LB, A, both joysticks, and down on the D-pad. But I found out that way is more difficult. This works online, which is awesome. The best part of Halo 2 Anniversary weapon lowering is that you have reach-style lowering with the sword. The best way to get rid of your sword's ammo, since there's no hologram, is to hit forged objects. You can also hit vehicles, but that can result in exploding. Unfortunately, Halo 2 Anniversary weapon lowering is not perfect. Your weapon does not stay lowered if you go in and out of forge mode. It will also raise if you try to switch weapons. I also found that you need to press the buttons quite quickly if you want to get it to work, but once you get used to it, it'll be easier. When you pick up a weapon with a Spartan, it will appear to be raised, but it is actually lowered. You can tell if it is still lowered by whether it is moving or just staying still. Also, it is worth noting that unlike the other Halos, every gun looks good when it is lowered. While you are dual wielding, your guns can also be lowered. Your guns will also stay lowered if you enter and exit a vehicle. Elites are actually a little different. When you pick up a gun while your gun is lowered as an elite, the gun will actually stay down. Elites actually look really good when holding small human weapons like SMGs or pistols. And last but not least, when an elite holds a carbine, it will not appear lowered. It will stay up whether it is lowered on your screen or not. And that is it. That is everything I have researched and found out about Halo 2 Anniversary weapon lowering. I hope this helped you, and I hope you enjoyed. Weapon lowering in Halo 5 and Halo Infinite is super easy and barely an inconvenience. For Infinite, you just need to go into Customs, edit your mode, and in Match Settings, you'll turn on Machinima mode. This will allow you to not only lower your weapon, but also go into Camera mode. The buttons are either X or B, and down on the D-pad for weapon lowering. Up on the D-pad for Camera mode, and then right on the D-pad allows you to see that camera speed and edit it, and also put the camera into Pan mode. You can even make it easier by adding a script that makes it as simple as pinging for your gun to lower. And some even do cool things like keep the visual up. For Halo 5, the Machinima mode setting is in general, and everything else is the same as Halo Infinite. And finally, for Halo Reach on MCC, you're going to want to press X, B, right stick, aka zoom, and down on the D-pad all at the same time. What a fun bunch of body acting we just did and finished. Now that we've covered boring dialogue scenes, let's do some action scenes are really fun, and if you're interested at all, you should definitely give making one a try. You have a couple options when it comes to filming. You can try to rely on body actors, but you have to find some first, and directing them can be a bit of a headache. When filming an action scene, make sure you aren't taking part in the action. You need to be able to watch and make sure it goes well. If someone's in the background monkeying about, it's on you to notice that. You should also storyboard your action. Not only will that help you know how the action actually flows, it'll allow you to split your action into snapshots. Once you've got those shots, now all you need to do is start body acting those movements. The best part about Halo in action is once you pull it off, you did it. You have that moment. Now all you need to do is capture it. Personally, I've developed the philosophy that I should stop once I think I've got it. This helps me save a lot of theater time, and if it's not good, you can just go back and try again. That's the best part of Machinima. If you want your action scenes to really pop, consider dipping your toe in modding. When it comes to my series, I record most of my dialogue using MCC and my 4 controllers, then I record my action scenes on MCC PC using bots. I've used this technique for my Last Man Standing episodes Slice and Dice and Part 3. The biggest problems I've encountered were matching the lighting from PC to console and not being able to use multiple controllers on PC. But I've recently heard of a method that will allow you to use multiple controllers. So just keep an eye on the comments and do your research because stuff changes all the time. When brainstorming for what you can do in an action scene, try and do things you don't see in regular gameplay. Everyone points and shoots in the game. Do something cool or people will get bored watching. When you're in theater mode to record your footage, try and move the camera around while you get your shot. Moving shots make things look way more dynamic and adds a lot to the action. Something else that really helped me out was watching through other Machinimas with great action scenes. Some awesome ones are The Running Dead and Spy 1 by Nightmare Films, Rise of the Spartans by Black Pedo Studios, Mike WB and Pedo 617 vs. the World by Mike WB, and you could also try watching Last Man Standing by Scribbly Productions. If you plan, storyboard, and get multiple shots of your action scenes, you'll get the hang of things very quickly. If you're using Fiverr Infinite, you'll want to use theater mode instead of Machinima mode, since action is a bit more difficult to pull off live. When I film, I like to have my shots zoomed in to make them feel tight. This also doesn't allow for much empty space, especially with the movements. This will also help make quick cuts feel natural. I've mentioned storyboarding before, but I haven't really gone over how, so I'll do that here. If you're planning on storyboarding, you'll just need either a simple template or a blank paper. The paper is divided into equal squares, and those squares you'll be drawing how you imagine the shots will look. I personally like to keep things crazy simple and just use stick figures, but you can go into as much detail as you need. If you're working with other people, you may want it more clear, but if it's just for you, do whatever helps. For some of the Halo games like Halo Reach, you'll have to use theater mode since Machinima mode wasn't an option yet. Cinematography can be different, but it's mostly a memorizing game. When I started out, I was using Halo 4, and to learn camera angles, I watched through RVB Season 11 and would note down and get pictures of different shots. Then whenever I needed an idea on how to frame something, I would just go in the folder and look. Some shot examples are medium shots, close-up shots, low angles, high angles, establishing shots, wide shots, and more. If you want to display emotion, you're going to want to really take advantage of camera angles. Knowing what angles display what emotion will really carry your work. And this isn't complicated either. This is as simple as knowing high angle shots where the camera is looking down makes the subject look weak, while low angle shots can make them look powerful. Practice makes perfect, so just give it some time and look at how other Machinimas and films do this. MCC Theater Mode has a very annoying system that only allows you to have up to 12 theater files for some reason. You just can't save them. It's great. Oh, and the most fun part is, if you close your game, it will sometimes delete all of your theater files. That basically means you're gonna need to really monitor and track how many files you have. You can delete unneeded ones in the menu, but I recommend getting in the habit of body acting and then immediately recording. Nothing is worse than losing footage, especially when you have body actors. I also like to edit footage while I record it. That way you can make sure the shots flow well, and if you're doing any helmet movements, you can make sure they match. It can be really easy to lose track of which shots go where if you're recording shot after shot. Some simple camera tips to help you develop your skills are that your shots should be stationary for the most part. I've seen some people move their characters and try to follow them with the camera, but your characters on screen should probably be standing still for the most part too. Too much movement in Machinima just looks really awkward. Moving is hard to follow closely and action has its own rules. So to start, I would avoid filming movement until you get more practice. If you do have a moving shot like a panning or establishing shot, don't stop it on screen. Try to keep the movement consistent and cut with it moving. When it comes to shooting, you want to make sure you're following the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is when you create equally spaced vertical and horizontal lines on a shot, and make sure the points of interest are on the grid's intersection points. If you're following my advice of using another Machinima series like Red vs. Blue for references, they should follow this rule as well. If you have an eye for photography and film and shot composition in general, you should be able to get the hang of this pretty quickly. If not, you will probably get the hang of it eventually. Next up is the 180-degree rule. This rule can be hard for some people to get, but it's really simple. The rule is that when two or more characters are on screen, they should have the same left and right. So if Harold is looking to the left and Frank is looking to the right and they don't move in the scene, they should always be looking in opposite ways. Sometimes you'll think maybe the shot would look better on the opposite side, but this rule is important because if both people are looking the same way, it just looks awkward and confusing, like they aren't actually talking to each other. You can switch sides, but it requires a center shot to reestablish which side the camera is on. And I think it should stay on the same side for a bit before switching back. Here are some examples. This scene is not good. It switches back and forth with no warning and it's confusing. This scene is good. It gives middle angles and stays consistent. At the end of the day, if you're not understanding any of this, don't worry, it will get better with practice. You just need to do it and maybe do some research. YouTube is your friend. There are tons of videos on film and camera angles and how to shoot and how to have engaging shots, so just look it up and do some research. Let's talk about editing. For editing, my best tips are that YouTube is gonna be your best friend. Anything you want to do has a tutorial online. A big part of editing is connection. Figuring out how to do cool stuff is awesome and people love to share it too. So if you're having any trouble, just look it up. You're likely to find an answer. My friends and I were trying to figure out how to do a comic opening for Slice and Dice, so we just looked up a template for After Effects comic books and there was already one ready to be downloaded. Some other tips I have is that if you can't zoom in-game, you can always add one using your editing program. You should also familiarize yourself with your brightness and contrast effect, since that's how you'll be doing color curves to make your video colors pop more. And finally, if you're looking for good render settings, I recommend checking YouTube. That's right, great job, because it is, I don't know how to do it. I just looked it up on YouTube too. Editing is all about learning, and you'll get the hang of how to start, then you'll learn how to do hotkeys, then you'll eventually know what elements go into effects, and you'll have a rough idea on how to replicate them just by seeing them. If you're looking to get into Machinima but learn something that could actually really help you in your professional life, I recommend considering animation. You have tons of free options like SFM and Blender to get started on your animation journey. Machinima mixes so well with animation since you don't really need to do an hour of animation to tell an hour-long story. You could tell an hour-long story and have 5 minutes of animation, and that will really elevate the entire video. Some people think adding animation makes your Machinima less of a Machinima, and I think, shut up and make your own tutorial. We praise animation in Machinima here. I was pretty anti-Machinima in animation for a while myself, but then I realized animation is just really, really cool, and it makes your shows way better, and it's just awesome. Animation can really add to the action or the comedy of your work, so I recommend giving it a try if you can in any way. I've personally worked with multiple animators to enhance my Machinima series to get past the limitations, and I feel like it's really improved my work. I've been fortunate enough to make friends with animators who enjoy what I do and are really interested in collaborating. I recommend that if you want to work with others instead of learning on your own, start your own community or be a part of others and talk to people. I find creatives look for connections like these and love to collaborate. Just remember to work with them. See what they want to do and how your work can fit with that. And now, here are some tips from my animator, Fifth Slayer.
Hey, Fifth here. So, animation tips. I'll start by saying that I'm going to be focusing on Blender specifically because I actually have little knowledge of animating in SFM. But I'll also begin with a few tips that are a bit more universal that help anyone no matter what program they use to animate, starting with the 12 principles of animation. The 12 principles of animation are essentially a set of techniques used in creating animations and are typically considered important to understand if one is to become an animator. There's timing, squash and stretch, exaggeration, anticipation, straight ahead, and pose to pose, follow through and overlapping, staging, slow in and slow out, arcs, secondary action, solid drawing, and appeal. There are some videos out there to help explain the principles in full detail. The one I'd recommend would be this one by Alan Becker, the guy behind Animator vs. Animation. Though another creator I'd recommend is Doodly. His channel is all about tips and trivia about 3D animation and animation in general. Another aspect to focus on is smear frames. Smear frames are a technique typically used to make animation easier to follow, specifically during faster movements, and can help make scenes feel a lot more energetic. Seriously, don't overlook smear frames. There's plenty of times I've done that only to look back at a finished animation and realize I could have made a fight look a lot better. Last thing I'll note before getting into Blender specific tips is the frame rate. Now usually you want your frame rate to be the same as your Machinima footage, so the final video's frame rate is consistent. Though most animation you see in films, television, and probably YouTube is done at 24 frames a second. And that change in frame rate can slightly affect how you animate, or at least how it feels For example, if you animate something at 60 frames a second, then lower the FPS to 30 in your animation program, everything will be slowed down since there's more time between each frame. It's also possible to animate slower than the frame rate you're using, normally called animating on 2s, 3s, or even 4s. You essentially hold the character on the same pose for, well, 2, 3, or 4 frames instead of every frame. In fact, most 2D hand-drawn shows do this since making a new drawing every frame can end up being very work-heavy and time-consuming. But 3D animation is starting to do it too, like with Spider-Verse and Puss in Boots 2. You can give animating like this a shot, especially since you don't have to do it all the time. If you just want a single shot to be animated on 2s, that's fine, and it can give a shot a nice look. Sometimes what most would consider a choppier look just might end up being a better look in general. Alright, now on to Blender tips. Since we're focusing on Halo, I'd recommend going to the Halo Archive Discord server. It has the biggest library of Halo assets ranging from character models to weapons and vehicles to even props. Though keep in mind it doesn't have everything. Some assets just either haven't been ripped from the games yet or may just not be in the Halo archive. Maps are an example of this. However, you can head to this link to download all the maps from Halo CE to Halo 4. Then you can use a program called Reclaimer to open the map files and export them in a file that Blender can open. And there are some tutorials on how to use Reclaimer for this purpose if you need them. Another thing you might have to do is edit the rigs for the character models. Ones like the Infinite models are already set up with stuff like IK or otherwise known as inverse kinematics, but the reach rigs don't come with that. Now to understand why it's important, inverse kinematics lets you control them via a single bone and will stay put instead of following the rest of the body. This is almost mandatory for the legs and can be great for arms a majority of the time, and you can even swap it on and off whenever you need to. We'll link a tutorial for setting this up just to make it a little easier. Making a scene is also important. Even with the map files, it might not even be worth setting up for certain scenes. Like this one for example. I could set up the map in Blender and try to recreate all the Forge stuff from scratch like I did with this other map, or I could just load the map into Halo and record some footage to use as the background. Just add a plane to your scene, resize it to match your video's resolution, and set it in front of your camera. Then add the footage to the plane through the node editor. Side note, the node editor is used to add or edit the textures on an object. Make sure the footage goes straight to the material output. This way it doesn't get affected by the lighting in your scene, and then add a second plane at ground level, and instead of it being the floor, it's actually going to be the shadows over the characters. Using this setup in the node editor and putting the blend mode to alpha blend and enabling backface, we can make it completely invisible except for the shadows, making for a sort of green screen effect. Now we just have to adjust the lighting and the background's all set. Now you probably won't be able to use it for any complex shots, like a fight scene with a lot of changing angles, but it still works well for simple shots. Now let's talk about add-ons. Since Blender is open source, people are able to make add-ons for the program that can help others with basically anything. Now I don't have many that will help with Halo specifically, but there is still a few I'd like to mention. One is Blender Kit. It's an asset library with over 9,000 models just for the free version alone. And though it's not Halo related, you might still find some models to use in your animations. There's also the Source.io add-on. This allows you to easily bring models and maps straight from the Source engine to Blender. And Source Filmmaker does have some Halo related stuff, maybe even some stuff that's not on the Halo archive. Spring Bones, or Wiggle Bones, add adjustable physics to bones and rigs. Either one of them work, I just sort of use them interchangeably, but one example of using them is with this motion for the bipod and the sniper rifle. The last two I'll suggest is Animation Layers and the Rococo Retargeting add-on. Now, animation layers let you add, well, layers to your animation. For example, say you have a walk cycle and you want the character to look around, maybe talk. Well, you can add a layer above the walk cycle that can influence the original animation without affecting the original keyframes. It can also be good for using with motion capture, which brings us to the Rococo Retargeting. Technically can be used to retarget any animation you want from one rig to another. It's mainly used to retarget mocap animation, hence why it's made by Rococo, who makes mocap suits. Now if you want, you can use mocap in a few ways. Either you can get yourself a suit, which is, well, expensive, or if you already have a VR headset, specifically something like the HTC Vive or Index, you can get 3 Vive trackers and record yourself with either Mocap Fusion on Steam or Breco OpenVR. Or you could get yourself a Kinect and use Breco Connect or IPI Soft. Though I will say, with a few years of testing out the Kinect, it can be a bit tricky to use. But there's also a free option through Mixamo. Mixamo is a website which hosts mocap data that's free to download and use, just as long as you set up an Adobe account, and it's a bit more restrictive since you can't create your own mocap data, but there's still a lot of good animations to sort through on the site. But just keep in mind, motion capture does not compensate for not knowing how to animate. You still need to know how to, just to get the most out of the motion capture, since you'll need to edit the results no matter how good the mocap data is. Now I think the biggest tip I can give is that, well, animation takes time. Not just time to make, but time to learn and improve. I've seen some feel discouraged because they don't feel like they're improving or feel like their work doesn't compare to others. I've had thoughts like that too from time to time, and I've been animating for 10 years now. The fact is that your first animation might not look great, and some people might just learn faster than others. The first animation I made that I still consider good was about 4 years in. If looking at others' work and comparing yours to them makes you feel discouraged, maybe try looking back at your own animations instead and focus on where you want to improve. Put that mindset into your next animation, whether it's making something small, like having a walk look better, or trying to have more dynamic poses. Make each animation a sort of stepping stone for your progress. Then maybe when you've made enough animations, go back and look at the early ones and see how much you've improved. It isn't bad to challenge yourself or compare yourself to what's already out there, but just make sure it isn't weighing you down. And it's perfectly fine to take breaks when needed. You'll still have plenty of time to practice when you get back to it.
Now that you've got your footage, you're on the last production step. Audio, arguably the most important. I'm gonna rip this band-aid off now. You can't use the game audio from the footage. It will be inconsistent, have multiple very audible cuts, and it'll be harder to balance, so you'll sound just about a million times better if you do your own sound. The first step is getting yourself a sound pack. Luckily, they're easily accessible, and I'll have a link in the description. These sound packs have everything. Footsteps, weapon sounds, death noises, vehicle sounds, everything. You'll start with map ambience. Depending on your script, you may want to change some things, like have war sounds in the distance, or wind blowing, or rain. But if you just need the basic Halo map sound, it's in the sound pack. If you do want these other sounds, just YouTube it and find one that fits. There's a wide variety of sound effects on YouTube. You just need to download them. Set the ambience throughout your video and make sure you do what's called a fade in and out. So when one ends and the other begins, it's not noticeable. Audio editing is hard and incredibly tedious, but I recommend getting started now so you can just keep getting better and better at it. I also do all the sounds for my action scenes. I typically don't do footsteps if I can avoid it during action because that can be a lot, and it won't really be noticeable with all the guns and music, but you can if you feel it's necessary. Try and get some nice studio headphones if you can. Once everything is laid out, there may be some pops and clicks that aren't even noticeable with speakers. So having studio headphones to make sure everything sounds good is your best option. You'll definitely want to listen through the video multiple times. Listen while staring intensely at the video. Listen with your eyes closed, listen with headphones. Just try to watch it until you feel like everything feels natural, well-paced, and balanced. Here's some tips from voice actor and audio engineer Laughing Block.
Hello, I'm Laughing Block, the voice's zombie slayer, and some other things, and I'm here to teach you about voice acting and audio stuff. Acting, in most cases, is an acquired skill, but some, even many aspects, can come natural to some people. No matter how good you think you are at actually acting and giving a performance, early on, there's always room for improvement, and you will get better with time and only with time. At the end of the day, practice is key, and specifically practicing with your voice and experimenting is key. But I want to take your mind away from the word practice, because practice is a kind of a nasty word. It's a gross word. It's busy work, right? Think instead of practicing with your voice that you're playing with your voice. You're toying with your voice. Try your best at mimicking your favorite characters' reads from specific lines in your favorite shows, or just accents, or specific family members and friends and how they sound. Sometimes you'll find unexpected things you're able to do or mimic. Even if it's not perfect, it's another tool you can add into your toolbox. Additionally, when you read lines, make choices. Don't just read from a script using a voice. Play with the line and vary your emphasis of words using the range, tone, or projection of whatever voice or character you're playing with. Overall, half the battle of acting is being in the right headspace as well, and regulating your emotions in a controlled manner or even in an uncontrolled manner under certain conditions, so you can project whatever emotion or tone that you're going for. When it comes to the actual recording process, do the best that you can not to break up your different reads as well, especially for a single line, and try not to separate out the recordings unless you have to. When you're doing a line, it's best to go for 3 to 4 workable reads or variations of the same line as a general rule of thumb. 3 or 4 sounds a bit specific, but that's for a few reasons. It gives whoever you're sending the line to enough material to work with while not being too much clutter and gives you essentially enough wiggle room for the various variations of your reads and giving them different portrayals of the same line. When you actually go to send out your lines as well, try not to edit your takes too heavily or apply voice effects or anything major. Let the director or whoever's doing the audio handle it. Clean, basic recording is a good recording take. Do yourself a favor and also export your recorded audio to a folder on your desktop. Use this folder as an archive or a backup folder for all of your recordings just in case something happens or the director or client loses track of what you sent them. Getting into the technical side of things, firstly, for editing audio, you'll probably need a DAW or DAW. DAW stands for Digital Audio Workstation and is the way you will record your audio digitally directly into your computer. Technically, most video editing software like Premiere and DaVinci are DAWs by definition and can be used to record, but generally it's best to use a designated DAW specifically made to process, record, and edit audio for many reasons. Use programs like Pro Tools, Ableton, Reaper, or Audacity, the latter two being free and a decent starting point. But if all you have is video editing software and you don't want to overcomplicate things on the jump or, save money, recording in your video editing software is okay. Also, for all you audio editors looking to handle and edit audio, keep in mind, audio is a bitch. Audio generally is very complicated, especially for routing in almost any manner. Sometimes audio equipment just won't work with software one day just cause. Hell, it could even change like on a dime or when you restart your computer. It's weird. Sometimes you have to restart your computer or just turn whatever the equipment or the computer off and on again to fix things. The best advice I can give for that and for troubleshooting is the internet. The internet is your best friend because no matter who you are, how experienced or familiar with audio editing you are, no matter what your education or degree is in audio is, you're gonna have to troubleshoot some aspect of audio at some point. So for the rest of this segment, I'm gonna try and be dumbing down most things and just give you what you need to start, just to keep things simple. When you're recording, generally it's important to make sure your gain stage properly, or for simplicity's sake, your input volume is not too high and not too low. Generally, you want to sit comfortably high so you can clearly hear with a bit of extra headroom so you're not clipping so you can yell or something. Audio is often best when it's generally unnoticed. Sometimes good sound design is just subtle. Same for music or dialogue. Hence being a cohesive whole, you want everything to work in tandem together to the point where it's unnoticed. Also, when you're recording and exporting audio, generally, unless it's very specific use cases, you want to record and export as a .wav file at 24 bits at 48 kilohertz. This is the industry standard and it's hard to go wrong with. 32 bits and going over a 48 kilohertz sample rate is overkill and will make your files larger than necessary, and you're more than likely not taking advantage of it because of the limitations of what equipment you're using. Moving on to like starting equipment and techniques, some starting equipment and techniques I would recommend getting yourself is a solid microphone. USB mics are fine for starting out and easy to set up. Do not buy one that's say more than $80. You're getting diminishing returns at that point. But you should buy one in the knowledge it should be replaced by a proper XLR setup relatively near down the road if you continue to pursue voice acting or content creation as a whole. For soundproofing a space when you're first starting out, I would recommend making a cheap PVC pipe cage with acoustic blankets or electrical blankets held up with like zip ties. If you can somehow get into an isolated space like a closet, that could be great if you can't afford something like that. What I did when I first started out is because I was poor and a high schooler and couldn't afford things, was I had normal blankets and towels pedals in a walk-in closet, and I use that as my studio for years. But if you can, try to limit the amount of noise in your recording space if you can avoid it. For headphones, which you will need a solid pair of headphones, especially if you're going to be editing audio. That's a very under-talked about thing. You need a solid pair of cans. For headphones, I would recommend Audio-Technica for beginners. They have some great headphones for the money, like the ATH M20Xs when on a budget, or the ATH M40Xs or 50Xs. I'm using 40Xs right now. They're not wonderful, but for the price, they're good headphones for what they are. I would definitely recommend them. If you want something much better and much more like premium that you might find in a full professional grade studio, you can't go wrong with something like the Sennheiser HD6XX or the classic Sennheiser HD600s, being probably one of the most famous pair of headsets of the last 25 years. You really can't go wrong with those. I'd highly recommend them. Well, I think that's it for me. That's kind of all I have for tips. So yeah, that's voice acting and audio.
For a video to feel well-paced, you should be happy with how everything sounds. Does a reaction to a line take too long? Shorten that bad boy until it sounds right. This will take some time to get an ear for, but you can do it. I mean, unless you can't. I don't know you. Maybe you try and you just really suck at it. Maybe you really hate one of the stages so much it makes you stop doing the whole thing. Try and look for people to help you. Lots of people make teams for Machinima channels, like Machinima, who makes the Halo guys, or me, Scribbly Productions. Since sound effects have a lot of balancing, the last thing I do is always finish up a video with music. Music can really make a production go to that next level. There are tons of music options for you on YouTube. Just look up royalty-free music and the type of music you're looking for. Need something dark and sinister for a villain? It's on there. Something peppy and high energy? It's somewhere too. There are different channels who make the music for passionate creators like you and me. Just make sure to credit them in the description or the credits. And if you really want, you can look into getting your own music made. Whether you have a friend who's maybe interested in it, or you want to go on a site like Fiverr, getting your own music made is more than possible. If you're not sure about whether music is going to work or not, give it time. Listen to it until you are happy with it. And if you can't find the perfect song, there's nothing wrong with not having one. In my experience, a song that doesn't fit is always going to be worse than no song. And that's your video. Watch through it as many times as you can, have your friends give their thoughts on it, and add the final touches you feel are best. You should also give yourself a deadline. I believe it's better to move on instead of dwelling on mistakes made, especially when you're learning. It's easier to implement those skills on a new video than to redo everything. I also believe art is about failure and improvements, so don't worry about it. When it's time to accept others' opinions on your work and accepting criticism in general, it's important to have a list of things you think or know need to be fixed already. Then, when you get the notes, you can see if your suspicions were true. Once my friends give me their opinions, I'll ask my own questions to figure out if they had similar thoughts to me. You should at least consider any feedback you get, but don't feel obligated to take every bit of criticism. It is your video, your vision, and your art. If you want something in your video, stick with your gut, even if everyone has notes on it. But I'd keep an eye on that because sometimes your gut is wrong. Even if I like something, if everyone tells me it sucks, I'll typically change it. Unless I really like it. Because at the end of the day, it's my art, so I do what I want. Before we talk about uploading your video to YouTube, I talked to multiple creators who make Machinima to get some thoughts and advice on uploading to YouTube. Chronicler177, creator of awesome series like Odd Men Out and Hyboreon, said he recommends you start with a plan. Outline your path for production and try to think of everything you're going to need to do before you get started so you don't get overwhelmed. He also gave some specific tips for Halo 5 that you can see on the screen now. Green Hygiene added you should review your script several times and make sure to start small. Do your bigger ideas once you have much more experience. He also said something I didn't even mention, which is holding personal sessions with your VAs. Some voice actors like to do their lines in their spare time. Some would like to have you there while they do their lines. I don't personally think either is necessarily better than the other, but it can't hurt to get experience being in a session. I recommend doing whatever the voice actor prefers. DanMan529 gave advice on finding your style and how to interact with the community, and most importantly, to keep your mind open. And last but not least, Rego from Machinima gave advice on how he handles his shorts. Now that your video is done, I'm sure you want people to watch it. To start, if you're comfortable, make sure you send it to all of your friends online and in real life. You want to get as many likes and comments as you can get to start. You'll also want to make sure you have a solid title. If your video is the start of a series, try adding series premiere to the title. In my experience, that gets videos a bit more views since it tells the audience this is a good jumping on point. I also include Halo Machinima in the title of my videos, and since this is a very niche hobby, it'll help you get the video to the people who want to see it. Next up is ranked tags. So you'll want to download something like TubeBuddy or vidIQ so you can see how your tags rank. Make sure you fill your tags list with things related to Halo and Halo Machinima. When I'm looking for tags, I'll try and find what the top searches are by putting Halo in the YouTube search bar and typing in letters of the alphabet. Fill the tags as much as you can. Then when it comes to your thumbnails, if you aren't a graphic designer, simpler is better. You don't want to add a bunch of text, you want a simple, clickable image. There's tons of videos on how you can create clickable thumbnails, just look those up. The next step is to make sure you post your video wherever you can. My Discord server is a great place, for example. We have a whole Machinima section to assist people with creating, and you know there are fans of it there. There are plenty of other Discords you can join as well. I also recommend the Halo Machinima Reddit. I'm actually a moderator there, and one of the best ways to get your Machinima seen is to make connections in the community. No one loves Machinima as much as the people who make it. If you do manage to get an audience to get partnered, keep in mind it is completely okay to monetize your Machinimas. You do not need to join a network or anything. You can just reach the requirements and make money through YouTube. Since I work with a lot of people, as you could even see throughout this video, I thought I'd touch a bit on what you can do to manage a team better. If you're working with multiple people, someone should probably be in charge. Someone who knows everything that's going on, what everyone is working on, and owning the channel, and being able to make the final decision. Machinimas are productions, and productions can be really hard, and having extra help, especially from people who have complementary skills, is great. I just think it's important that if you're the one who's the lead, make sure you can do everything you need to complete the video. It's fine to rely on other people for your work, but you should make sure you can do what's needed. Sometimes people have things happen. Life can get in the way and people just lose interest. Try to keep your communication open and honest, and remember not to hold things against the people just because they can't help. This is supposed to be fun and a hobby. And finally, be careful. This can be really serious for people, and friendships can be lost and things can happen. I don't have any tips to avoid this, but good luck. That is all of the tips I have for you. Thank you so much for watching this. If you're hearing this, you watched it all the way through, which is insane because this video will probably be over an hour. I sincerely hope you found all of this information useful. Machinima is an amazing art form and hobby that's expanded my dreams and allowed me to really hone and refine my skills. Camera work, writing, editing, these are all important film skills that will carry over to live action films or animation. If you have any questions, just leave a comment below. I'll be sure to try to answer everything we get, so if something isn't covered in the video, check down there. Remember to know your worth and that you are talented. Give your best effort and never stop improving. Trust your gut and do your own thing. Patience is also important, especially if you're going to be working with a lot of other people. To talk a bit about me, my dream is to finish all of my Machinima series, so Isaiah and Brian, the Misfits, Halo Butt Buddies, and Last Man Standing, and I guess the Halo Pals, but those are just shorts. But then I'm going to move on to direct and write 2D and 3D original animated series. So this Machinima tutorial is really my love letter to Machinima. I really hope to see multiple Machinima generations using this video, and I hope to see people continue making it, because it's pretty cool. Thanks for watching. Well, I hope you enjoyed that Machinima tutorial. That was a lot of work. We worked really hard to make sure it had all the information that we thought was required. Special thanks to everyone who contributed, Justin, Laughing Block, Fifth, and especially Ty, who did all of the editing for it. We are working together to get Scribbly Productions up and running. So if you are a supporter and you're like, man, I really like this, and you also like my videos, consider Patreon. We're, trying to build up a business. I want to get into animation and do more cool videos and stuff. And speaking of that, we got some real cool videos coming out this year. This was just the start. I just wanted to get this one out of the way. The rest of the year, absolute bangers. So thanks, Ty. Thanks everyone else who contributed. Consider Patreon. Peace out.